Everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. I have a motto on my channel. It is an aspirational motto, data over dogma, and what that means to me is that prioritize the data over whatever dogmas might incentivize arriving at certain conclusions, whether those dogmas are religious dogmas or political dogmas.
All right, let's see it. And the fit for today is Superman.
There's no way the Jesus of the Gospels would ever even think about voting for someone like Donald Trump.
That's the very essence of fascism. Make America great again is a fascist ideology.
This is just a holdout because it is an effective identity marker for right-wing authoritarian readers of the Bible.
Jesus would actually be quite opposed to Trump's Machiavellian approach to using immigration as a rhetorical bludgeon, as a wedge in order to try to increase their access to power.
And there are no data that support the notion that the ideals and the ethos and the principles that gave structure to the Declaration of Independence and the state constitutions of the original 13 colonies and the U.S. Constitution come from the Bible.
If MAGA were concerned with reducing the rate at which women seek out abortions, they would significantly increase access to comprehensive sex education, to contraception, to women's health care. So MAGA's approach to abortion and child sex trafficking are really about identity markers in the culture wars. They're not actually prioritizing mitigating the rate of either.
At least the book of Exodus in the Hebrew Bible makes clear that they did not understand the destruction of a fetus as murder.
God knows all people who have ever existed and who will ever exist before the creation of the earth anyway. That does not endow them all with full moral and legal personhood since the beginning of time.
In the Hebrew Bible, a fetus was not yet considered a person, and so destruction of a fetus was not considered murder or even homicide. It was considered more of a property crime.
Somehow all fetuses have full moral and legal personhood. None of these passages mean any such thing whatsoever. That is just a dogma in search of an argument, and it is a terrible argument at that.
A lot of Christians have an awful lot of growing up to do when it comes to misogyny.
When women are not in leadership positions, they don't get to influence decision-making, and the decision-making is going to give priority to, be biased towards the interests of the men.
The way things were was patriarchy, men ruling over women, and so that's probably why Genesis 3:15 has subordination as one of the curses that is imposed upon the woman.
The concerns of women are going to be marginalized, which is a reality that is undeniable.
The text is obviously deeply patriarchal, and that is a problem.
Inequality of role inescapably leads to inequality of value.
They did not understand what was going on with homosexuality in the first century CE. We have a far better understanding today. We know there's nothing wrong with it. We know that it is not harmful.
The Hebrew Bible says nothing at all about female same-sex intercourse. So no, Romans 1 is about both female and male same-sex intercourse. And again, Paul is rationalizing the reasons for this in ways that are demonstrably and empirically false. Paul had no concept of human sexuality as it is understood scientifically and socially today. Paul had no concept of loving, monogamous, long-term, equal same-sex partnerships, marriages, and families.
In other words, a man could have sex with an unmarried woman who was not his wife. That was not considered adultery. Not in the Hebrew Bible, not in early Greek usage.
Genesis 2:24 to be prescribing marriage between one man and one woman. And Genesis 2:24 is also doing no such thing whatsoever. Genesis 2:24 is an etiology for pair bonding and for independent kinship units.
You know better than the church fathers?
On matters of human sexuality, 100%. Because man and woman are gender designations, they are not sexual identities, they are not biological sex. That a man is a man and a woman is a woman and a man cannot become a woman. This is not a fact, this is an ideology. This is about terrorizing trans men and trans women to try to disincentivize the existence of trans women and trans men. And so the notion that man and woman are these immutable, unchangeable biological characteristics is simply a falsehood.
Things have changed, and now people have intentionally adopted the singular they, them pronouns because the gendered pronouns he and she are inaccurate. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing confusing about this.
Sex and gender are two different things. Gender is a conceptual category, a social construct that is tied to biological sex in a variety of different ways, but is negotiable. But even if we look at biological sex, male and female are two ends of a spectrum. It is not a binary. There is integration at the center, and you cannot like that as much as you want, but that is a fact.
Because they're not necessarily transgender, they are non-binary. These are two different things. People have been trying to tell you this for a long, long time, and you're not listening.
These people convince themselves that this is a choice and that these people can just decide not to be trans. And that is not only factually incorrect, it is phenomenally harmful.
Whiteness is a religion in and of itself that a lot of American Christians are committed to.
So one of the central messages of the entire book of 1st Isaiah is social justice, or who have attended nonviolent protests of a genocide that is going on in Palestine. When all other things are equal, I will give the benefit of the doubt to the less powerful group.
It's all negotiable, and there's no one living today who asserts the authority of either scripture or tradition or both, who is not working with morals that have been renegotiated. This notion that if it was a sin 3,000 years ago, then it was a sin 100 years ago, and it's a sin today. This is laughably wrong. And just as every passage of the Bible is negotiable, every second of church tradition is negotiable. Sin is negotiable. We decide what it is and what it isn't, and we curate its boundaries to serve our own interests.
Attempt to twist the Bible into suggesting that is imposing one's own dogmas upon the text, because that makes the Bible useful for structuring power and values.
And if your identity politics incentivize you to minoritize, marginalize, and oppress already vulnerable groups, then you need to grow the hell up and do so much better.
That the only reason this identity marker continues to be waved around is because it is useful for the structuring of power and values and boundaries. The sooner we can set aside these outdated, these idiotic, these harmful identity markers, the sooner we can progress as a society.